So we all know the Define series from Fractal Design. The Define R5, R6, S2, S2 RGB Vision. Well, today we have the Define 7. Yep, the R is dropped. But what has Fractal added to make the Define 7 worthy of your hardware? Hey, what's up, Oceaners? I'm Blue Devil. Today we're going to take a look at the Fractal Design Define 7, which the model that was sent to me is the black-white tempered glass model, which is one of 9 different configurations. The other case that Fractal has launched is the Define 7 XL, which shares every characteristics of the Define 7, but is much larger. So why don't we take a walk around the Define 7. To kick things off, the Define 7 really is not that much different than its predecessor, the Define R6. The R is dropped in the naming convention, probably to be more distinctive of the revisions that were made to the Define 7. Fractal Design, at least with the Define series, has played it mainly safe. Played it safe meaning the Define 7 feature set are exactly what consumers are asking for and nothing more. Fractal even just started making RGB fans this year, resisting the unicorn vomit movement for as long as they could. However, with cases like the Define S2 RGB Vision, the cat's out of the bag for that one. The Define 7 still has clean, smooth lines while it's maintaining the Scandinavian minimalistic look. The front panel, which is still a door, which still has the trademark brushed metal finish, but this time with the new embossed Fractal Design logo. Opening the door up and you will see another staple of Fractal's Define series, the front fan air intake filter. While still supporting 5¼ inch drives, you'd only really notice by looking for the mounts, which are almost camouflaged by the 2 of 3 included 140mm Dynamic X2 GP-14 fans that spin at 1000 RPM. On the bottom of the front panel is another norm for Fractal, the full-length PSU filter, cleverly accessible from the front of the case. Moving to the business side, you are greeted by the side air intake louvers, which from the looks of it have been spaced wider apart than the R6, which should improve airflow. Looking at the tempered glass panel, IMO, a lot of companies can't figure out a better way to secure them other than thumb screws, made me thank Fractal for making such a great retention system on the Define 7. To remove the tempered glass side panel and back panel, a plastic tab is attached to the upper right hand corner. Pulling this tab will allow the panel to be released from the pushpin style retention system, allowing for a toolless entry into the Define 7. Shifting to the rear of the Define 7 is pretty standard stuff, a PSU bracket and a clean finished look with all matching PCIe brackets. 2 vertical PCIe slots are visible with about 1.5 inches of clearance to the tempered glass, spacing for either 120 or 140mm fan, of which is occupied with the last of the 140mm included fans. Topside to the Define 7 is where it differs most from its predecessor. Gone is the Moduvin system with different panels, which Fractal now includes 2 different top plates. The first one, which is a flat, more silence-focused top panel, is pre-installed using the same push-pin retention system found on both side panels. Once the top panel is removed, giving access to the third fan filter that spans almost the length of the top panel itself. Under the fan filter is a removable access panel that really opens up the Define 7 for installation. Having a removable access panel is great for pre-mounting water cooling radiators and or fans. Also, the access panel has offset mounting for improved motherboard installation with water cooling in mind. As you can see, I have set up a full water cooling CPU loop in the Define 7. I originally wanted to put my 320mm radiator in the top access panel, but the Swiftech Maelstrom D5 res pump combo that I'm using is just too big. I mounted the pump res combo on the top of the 3.5 inch drive cage in the basement, which houses 2 3.5 inch drives or 3 2.5 inch drives. Back to the top panel, the front I/O is now accompanied by a USB Type-C Gen 2 port, along with 2 USB 2.0 and 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports. Also present are headphone and mic jacks, as well as a reset button and a very tactile power button. The installed system is my test system, which consists of an 8700K overclocked to 5 GHz in an ASUS Z370 Maximus X code, 32 GB of Team Group's T-Force Delta R RGB DDR4 at 3000 MHz. For storage is an Intel 760p M.2 NVMe 256GB SSD, and Team Group's Vulkan Z 500GB 2.5-inch SSD. Providing graphics is the NVIDIA RTX 2080 Super FE model. Rounding out power is Be Quiet's platinum rated straight power 11 at 650 watts. Running this system at idle, temps were about 33 degrees C idle with low temps dipping in the high 80s while running AIDA64's extreme stress test. I had moved the two 140mm dynamic X2 GP14 fans from the front to the roof because of the radiator and reservoir placement, replacing them with three Cooler Master Fan Pro 120 AP fans on my 360mm radiator. Given the placement of the fans, I have no questionable doubt that had I been able to mount the 360mm rad in the roof, temps would have been better, having the two X2 GP14 fans in the front pulling in cooler air, or at the very least, get better 120mm fans. Functionally, the Define 7 does just about everything right. I found it extremely easy to build in, especially with the Define 7's excellent water cooling support. The two-tone black and white model is a love it or hate it kind of thing. Personally, I don't mind it. Some Oceaners have mentioned to me that the white PSU shroud is a bit off-putting, but I can see the reasoning Fractal had with continuing the color palette from the motherboard tray as well as the modular back wall. Aesthetically, the Define 7 doesn't really change a lot of what made the Define series unique. Instead, small changes are what we are receiving as case revisions are made. The most impactful improvements I can see are actually in the cable management department. Very clean cable runs are possible and are easy to pull off thanks to the cable management system that Fractal seems to have borrowed from NZXT. Now, cable management channels, in a sense, have been created to manage the spaghetti monster of cabling that almost every build has. To top things off, Fractal has also included a shroud for the backside of the PSU compartment, making it even easier to hide additional cabling from the PSU. Also complementing cable management is the perfectly placed 9-fan hub in the very top center of the back of the motherboard tray. Another thing water coolers are going to like. So in conclusion, the Define 7 from Fractal Design is, in my opinion, damn near perfect. However, some things that I would like to see would have been a rubber grommet in the upper left corner of the PSU shroud, as well as front ventilation being a bit more open. Maybe where the bottom filter is located, possibly shortening that up and making an opening from the bottom to allow more air to be let in from the front. That being said, the Define 7 from Fractal Design gets the Hot Award. Okay guys, thanks for tuning in to talk about the Define 7 from Fractal Design. If you could be so kind to like and subscribe, that would be great. Blue Devil, out.